What's up, guys? Baby Susaka, and today we're doing a very tired man tier list of Obituary because I'm kind of doing this at 6:30 a.m. But yeah, I'm just gonna stop talking and get right into it because we're gonna start right over here with. Well, I made this on the spot, so I don't know how to make it perfect, but it kind of just loaded in like this, even though I saved them in specific order. Uh. But obviously, Slowly We Rot is up first. And Slowly We Rot, I think, sits comfortably for me at an A tier. Because, I mean, it's up in my top 5. I can tell you. Well, out of 8 albums that are on Spotify, it's in my top 5. Which is, I mean, not saying much, but because there's only 8 of them, there's not much of competing other than that, you know. There's only 3 other albums until you get to 8. But we are, gonna rate it at A tier because for me, I'm rating it at A tier not because I'm not in love with it. I mean, it's a fucking great album. And the reason why I'm even putting it in A tier is because especially for the time, I mean, when it was released, it's a completely new sound from anything else in death metal, especially the guitar tone. We have to talk about the guitar tone a lot in this video. And the sludgy guitar tone, very signature Obituary guitar tone, it's just on a new level, and it's really good. And I don't know what else I can really say, because it's basically just a really good death metal album, and I'm putting it in A, even though because it's obviously like one of those legacy albums, but I'm not really bothered by, I'm not really swayed by legacy albums. I don't really care for legacy albums when I'm ranking them myself. When I'm ranking them myself, I'm gonna rank them based upon how often I will come back and listen to it. And A tier means that I'm going to come back and listen to it a lot. So, I mean, yeah, that's that. I mean, it's a great album, but I do admit that I like some others more. And I'd say that the some others are like 3 other albums that I enjoy more than this. And none of them are Cause of Death, because this one's going in B tier. I'm sorry, especially with how everyone I've talked about Obituary, who knows Obituary and actually listens to them, has said like, oh, it's like the greatest thing ever. And then I went into it and it was, because I mean, I listened to both of these albums in the same day, back to back, so I had a very close comparison. And from Slowly We Rot to Cause of Death, it just feels like something about the energy that was on Slowly We Rot is exchanged for another energy that I don't really like that much on Cause of Death. It's like a different energy. It's a different album. Yes, of course, it's a different album. They kind of that's kind of like the tone here, right? It's kind of the point of making more than one album, making it different than the first one. But I feel like it's swayed from a certain energy that the first one had that I don't know, the songs didn't resonate with me so much on first listen as they did with Slowly We Rot. And I kind of just never really felt like going back to it because it kind of felt a little dragged out and not really getting anywhere to the point. Because I'm obviously in my head, I've been listening to the Morbid Angels, the fucking, all the other stuff I've been listening to for years now. And Morbid Angels pretty much set the tone for what my preference will be. And Cause of Death is like, if you compare Blessed Are the Sick to Authors, it's just like, yeah, Blessed Are the Sick is a great album on its own. I would honestly say it's like 5 times greater than the Cause of Death even. But compared to the first album, it just doesn't compare. It's just so much better, the first album. At least in my opinion. But that's just I just I mean I couldn't get it in my head, but it's not all dark for this ranking because it's still a good album. It's not bad, but I probably won't listen to it that much. And I'm giving it a B tier almost just because it's like a legacy album, which I know that kind of contradicts the fact that I said that I don't really get swayed by legacy albums. But hey, that's the way we do it on this channel. And of course, The Incomplete is next, which for me is the first S tier album because this was the first album where I was like, holy shit, I love this. Because for me, this is where, for me, the riffs and everything just comes together the best this early on in the career for Obituary. And I mean, these albums are all pretty much, from Slowly We Rot to Cause of Death, pretty much 2 years apart. Cause of Death to Incomplete, pretty much 2 years apart. So the fact that these are so close together, I mean, they were pumping them out. And I mean, pretty much, they continue doing that until, yeah, now. The certain point of time when Obituary quits for a while. But hey, that's not important. I'm gonna explain why this is in an S tier instead. Basically, for me, it did again what I liked on it, Slowly Rot, with that energy that I liked in the guitar tone. It's a little more, it's more similar to how the guitar tone is on Cause of Death with like more boomy bass, but in this one it's even more in your face. And I like that about this guitar tone, and it actually does have a major effect on how I have viewed the entire album, because this more in-your-face boomy guitar tone, which is still the sludgy we know from the Slowly We Rot, it was like dialed in a little better in my opinion, and just the riffs and songs were so much more in my league, I guess, in my type of preference, if I say so. I mean, it was kind of like hearing, like, it's like Obituary's equivalent of when I heard Formulas for the first time. It's like, I didn't know what to expect. I could have gone anyway, but I had my prediction. My prediction was actually that I would like this album, but hey, I ended up loving it instead. So, I mean, that's a nice trade for what it is. And I actually thought I was gonna like Cause of Death because of how much praise it got, but it just didn't resonate so much with me. And I don't know. I mean, you can probably pinpoint what I like about Obituary from these albums alone. And it's probably gonna you're probably already able to guess what's gonna also be an S tier, just from this Incomplete choice alone. You're probably gonna be able to guess the other S tiers. I wouldn't be surprised if you could. But yeah, it's just the album's just much more of what I like, what I usually would listen to, and I definitely would listen to this one a lot. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, I believe next up we do have World Demise, and I'm actually not sure where to put this, because in my tier list I have it like 5, which is the lowest out of my top 5. But part of me is even thinking about putting it in an S tier just because it was pretty solid and consistent, most importantly. But the fact that it's lower on my top 5 than Slowly We Rot, which is number 4. Slowly We Rot is my number 4. I mean, that should set the tone for what the fuck I'm gonna do. I'm obviously gonna put it in A tier next to Slowly We Rot. I like this album. Much like Killbot, Gorgur Attack also likes this album. It doesn't really change much from the Incomplete, honestly, for like most of the songs. It's pretty much the same style and stuff, but it felt a little more dialed back, maybe. Maybe not as hard-hitting as the Incomplete for me. And, you know, it's a pretty good album, but it's just, some things here and there could be lacking. And they also have their weirdest song ever, Kill For Me. Which, I mean, I didn't mind it. Like, I got through it. I listened to it from start to finish. And like, the entire time I was just so fascinated that Obituary made a song like that with that kind of like tribal touches to it. Like, I did not expect that. Like, I did not expect it. So that's one of the things that, even though I don't like that song, because the song itself is kind of didn't really feel much about it. I feel like it just did a lot for me, kind of similar to how Slowly We Rot did a lot for me, and that's why it's in my top 5. And I do like this album quite a bit. Like, these you gotta fucking realize here. Like, C tier is like an average album. B tier is like a pretty good album. A tier is a really good album, and S tier is a perfect album in my opinion. You know. So it's not like B tier is fucking cost of death. Oh, I fucking so goddamn shit. It's like, no, it's a really good album, and these are fucking awesome, and this is perfect, you know. But yeah, that's at least all I can say for World Demise, because there's not really much to say about it. I can put it in A tier and say that yeah, I like it about as much as Slowly We Rot, but it's just like Slowly We Rot has a slight edge because it's kind of more interesting throughout. But there's not really much more to it, is it? And I believe this is where the hiatus begins. And when they came back, they made one more album, right? I am not sure. No. They had their little hiatus after World Demise, I think. I think that's not this kind of video, but it's my second S tier. Let's just fucking be honest here. If you fucking know the sound of The Incomplete, this is why I said you can probably guess what my other S tier is gonna be, because the Frozen in Time. Initially, I gave it my favorite part, like my number 1 Obituary album, when I just gave my rating, just like after listening the first time. But it's probably gonna be my second favorite album after a few listens to my few favorites that I have, which is basically the 5 albums I'm gonna put up here in A and S tier. Those are pretty much what I'm gonna be listening to. But this one was kind of like, it felt like they dialed it back a little bit. Not back as in removing intensity, but I meant like dialing it back, like going back to what I liked about The Incomplete, but expanding a little on it. We got the fucking in-your-face, just purely loud guitar tone. This is exactly how Obituary guitar tones should sound. This is the one I like, because it's the most just punchy and in-your-face type of Obituary guitar tone, which they kind of lost after this, but then they brought back for another album, which is why that one's also in this tier. But yeah, that's not important yet. It's just, it felt a lot more interesting, and that's probably why I wanted to put it in my favorites at first, because I wanted to give you a fair chance. Even though song-wise and all the overall stuff, I know that I have another favorite in my number 1 spot, but it's like Frozen in Time. It's about as good as it gets in this era of Obituary. It doesn't really get any better than that, because it kind of goes downhill for a little while, but only really for one album. And I don't really know what I can say, because like, it's hard to explain my feelings towards this album, because it's like, this album is like, with The Incomplete, how say that the songs resonated with me a lot more than like Cause of Death or Slowly We Rot. But it was like, this one, I mean, resonated with me more than The Incomplete, which is my third pick. Yeah, Incomplete is my third favorite album. And this one, Frozen in Time, my second favorite album. It's like the same feeling, but the songwriting is just so good. And of course, we got Redneck Stomp, the Iconics, fucking. I mean, how could you not like Redneck Stomp if you like Obituary? I mean, you know, it's a really fucking good album. I mean, I'm really tired, so that's why I'm stumbling in a little bit on around my words. But I felt I wanted to get it out of the way, and it might be funny for me to look back at how fucking tired I was, because it will. When I look back on this video, I'm gonna be like, wow, I should have really waited until I wasn't that tired, because, goddamn, you know. But yeah, it's up there. It's my favorite, one of my favorite albums and in fact one of the best death metal albums I've heard. Yeah, even one of the best out. I mean, anything in the S tier is one of the best death metal albums I've heard. One of them, at least. The incomplete and the front. Not. But yeah, not everything is very good, and originally I would have put this with Cause of Death, but I really don't like this. I'm putting in the C tier because I don't hate it. But I really don't like this one. And it pretty much set the tone for the album when the first song I heard was Visions in My Head. And the intro kind of sounds like metalcore. I don't know what they were thinking. It's literally just dugga 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 dugga. It's like, what? I know it's not metalcore, but it's like, it's sounding like that, and it doesn't really fit Obituary's sound, in my opinion. And that song I heard years back before I even started listening to Obituary, and it's just like, really? This is what they wanted to put out? I got 4 songs in, and I was just like, nah. I'm just gonna listen to the self-titled instead, because it was kind of painful to hear the songs on there. It's just like, something about the guitar tone and the production is just so polished, so over polished on this one. It lost all manpower and all the balls that the previous albums had. I would much rather listen to Cause of Death over this. Cause of Death has a massive big fucking wiener over this one. That's a weird analogy, but you get my drift here. Probably, at least. It's like the worst possible Obituary album as far as I can see. And I think it's pretty reasonable that I called that, because it really just is. Like, there's nothing redeemable about it, because I went 4 songs just wondering what the hell happened here. It was like going into a room where there's been a fight. Like, okay, it's messy in here. Must have been rough, you know? It's kind of like the reaction I got from this. But then the self-titled, much like Killbot says, it kind of picks up again. I don't really like it that much, so I'm putting it next to Cause of Death and B tier. And then, of course, it's still a pretty good album if I'm putting it in B tier. But pretty good isn't really good or amazing / perfect. And it's a really good return to form. And I could imagine that after the album, which in my head is called Visions in My Head, I know it's not, but that's the only thing I remember. I only remember one song, and I don't even remember the album title. That's how much I don't like it that much. But I'm putting it in a C tier because I don't hate it still. It's just, I really just don't like it. I don't hate it, because I can still, like, kind of stand it if you put it on the background, but it would have to be like background music at a place where I'm drunk. And preferably opening music before, like, a band plays, because I would like to hear some good music if I heard this, like, honestly. But self-titled, yeah, it's a solid return to form in my opinion, and it's kind of like a mark for the change in Obituary coming back to normal, because after this one, Obituary will go on to make the album, which is probably in the future gonna be the one where I say, well, I was right, this is my favorite album, this is the best Obituary fucking got. And it fucking happened in 2023. What the fuck do you guess? It's fucking The Dying of Everything. Holy shit. It was the first Obituary album I listened to in full, and it's actually the reason I gave them a chance, because before, I heard Slowly He Rots, like the title track, and Visions in My Head, way back when I was like 16, 17. I'm like 22 now, turning 23. But when I was like 16, 17, maybe, I heard Slowly Rot's title track and Visions in My Head. And Slowly Rot's title track, I mean, back then, I was barely into death metal at all. I mean, the heaviest thing I knew was like Hammer Smashed Face. And I wasn't really into death metal back then. It was before I even like was aware of the genre name death metal as much as I am now, especially. But I didn't really listen to that much, you know, that back then. So, for me, I wasn't used to the sludgy guitar tone of Obituary back then. So I just ended up putting them off as a band because I just didn't like it when I was barely used to death metal. Which, on me, it's 100% my fault because I never gave them another chance once I got into death metal. Until I heard that, oh, Obituary got a new album. Well, I'll check out their new album and then see where we go from there. And I checked out their new album, and here we are. Now I fucking like Obituary. How about that? Big surprise. It only took me getting into more of the Angel, Deicide, and fucking Hate Eternal, Cannibal Corpse, and all that first. You know, Vader, even. But yeah, Dying of Everything is probably gonna be my favorite Obituary album for the rest of time. Because I don't think they're topping it, and I don't think I'm gonna switch it around. Because it's not gonna... No, not any of the A tier or below. Those are never gonna change. These are set in stone, pretty much, these ratings. These, I'm not entirely sure. I might switch over to Frozen in Time. But, as of right now, dude... Dying of Everything is definitely my favorite, just because of the writing and the solos and everything of that kind of sort. And also just the fact that it has probably one of the best death metal songs ever made on it. And that's, of course, in my opinion, one of the best death metal songs ever made. Fucking The Wrong Time. The first time I heard The Wrong Time was like my first time giving Obituary another chance, right? When that single came out, when the album was announced and everything. And I listened to it and was like, wait, this is pretty fucking good, actually. But then, I mean, obviously I listened to the whole album, and now I've listened to the song a lot more, and now it's just like, every time I hear it now, it just blows my mind that they made such a good fucking song in 2023. I mean, obviously they probably recorded it in like 2021 or 2022, maybe even 2020. You know what I mean, but releasing that good of a death metal song as an old death metal band in 2023 gotta fucking say something about Obituary fucking being able to write songs still. I mean, John Tardy sounds just about the same he did on the other albums that I put in S tier, just with more modern production. But here's the thing, Dying of Everything has a raw modern production. If you get what I mean, I think you get what I mean. It's like the kind of modern production where it's like, you can tell that real instruments and real amps were used, you know? Kind of like that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But whatever, Visions in My Head, I'm gonna call it. Inked in Blood is the album name. That's how much I don't like it, by the way, which I already said. It sounded so much more modern and just bleh, you know, in comparison. This is like the perfect example of how to do a modern production but not fuck it up. And, you know, I'm obviously not such a massive fan of modern production because I kind of associate it with most deathcore and metalcore, which most of it, the new stuff, very boring. Like, it's like the same breakdowns, the same dun 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 dun, and then the same do 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 do. You know, it's the same fucking shit people are putting out now, calling it metalcore and deathcore, and not even fucking. They're not even like there's metalcore from back when metalcore was like the shit for everyone, and deathcore as well from when that was the era, and like later on. We're like, there are really good songs, but like metalcore and deathcore as a whole just fell off in recent time with like Sleep Token or whatever the fuck, Spirit Box, fucking garbage metal. You know, if I'm comparing that to like what you and I would call metalcore, like Trivium, we would call that metalcore back in the day, you know? That doesn't sound like metalcore anymore compared to the modern metalcore, you know? Because that still had guitar solos. I mean, that's pretty much like thrash metal, the early Trivium, compared to the modern metalcore, at least, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, they just got lazy recently with metalcore and all that stuff, you know? In my opinion. I've liked some metalcore and deathcore, but the recent stuff has been more disappointing for me. Like, I've liked the earlier stuff a lot more because the production was more raw, less ultra polished like nowadays, you know, Polyphia fucking sounding ass, you know. But yeah, the dying of everything, the wrong time, I mean, the right mindset, the wrong time, you know, a fucking awesome chorus. But the most important part is that fucking riff is gonna stick with me for fucking ever. And I shit myself here. So I'm should probably go to the toilet, and I actually have to head for work right now. I'm gonna sit on the computer and do a little work at my workplace. Yep. So I'm gonna upload this, and it's probably gonna upload while I'm going to work. But yeah, next up is maybe Deicide. I might just skip doing Deicide because I don't want to deal with those kind of fans. Like, that's one of the things. I love certain bands, but certain bands have annoying fans, like Baby Metal. I like the band, but the fans, you know, I'm not dealing with those. Yeah, honestly, on second thought, I think I'd rather just deal with one or two pissed off Obituary fans doing a little bit of a redneck stomp, in my opinion. Of course, I had to throw in a joke there. But it's not like I'm gonna hurt you if you disagree. You can very much disagree. You can say that Vision's Ink and Blood is your favorite album. Just give a fucking proper reason why. Don't just say, yeah, man, your favorite album was shit. Missions is much better, you know? This is so much better riffs, you know? It's like, okay, can you go in detail about the riffs? No, man, it's just better. You know, not like that. I don't want to hear that shit. Like, that shit's just gonna get you removed. And just, like, actually give a reason. And just, like, chill out. It's just fucking music. Music is still subjective at the end of the day. Nothing I've said in this video is to be taken as objective fact. It's just simply me sharing my experience and my opinion, and giving y'all a little bit of an insight into what kind of stuff I like. 'Cause these albums are all pretty similar if you consider the fucking overall spectrum of it. And it's just how it is. So yeah. That's Obituary. Next is gonna be Autopsy in maybe a month. Depends how fast I am on listening. Maybe 2 weeks if I'm fast at listening. But yeah, that's Obituary for now. And yeah. I've been Suicide Guy, and you know, the models, stay cute.